overthinking about her aging body. This woman creates a younger and more perfect version of herself. The film opens with a scene of an egg yolk being injected with a mysterious substance, which slowly causes another yolk to grow as if the liquid is capable of multiplying biological cells. The scene then shifts to the creation of a Walk of Fame star belonging to a famous actress named Elizabeth Sparkle, symbolizing her glory and massive influence in the entertainment industry at that time. After the ceremony, reporters, fans, and even tourists gather around to take pictures with her star. However, as time passes and new celebrities begin to rise, Elizabeth's fame slowly fades until her name is nearly forgotten by 2024. Occasionally, a few people still stop by to take pictures with her star, but most of them are older fans who admired her during her prime years. Over time, Elizabeth's star begins to crack due to age and weather, seemingly reflecting how her popularity has slowly faded throughout the years. In the present day, Elizabeth is still working in the entertainment industry as the host of a TV aerobics program called Sparkle Your Life, which airs every week.
Props! You want to look like a giant jellyfish on the beach? Kick! Come on! All right, I hope I see you next week for Sparkle Your Life. Take care of yourself.
On her 50th birthday, everyone congratulates her after filming ends. However, when she is about to use the restroom, Elizabeth is forced to enter the men's restroom because the women's restroom is broken. There, she accidentally overhears the producer of the show, Harvey, telling his staff to immediately find a replacement host because Elizabeth is considered too old for the program. Harvey no longer cares about Elizabeth's achievements or past fame. To him, all that matters is finding someone younger and more attractive to boost the show's ratings.
Find me somebody new, now. We need her now. We need her hot. We need her young.
After hearing that, Elizabeth is deeply hurt and can only stare at herself in the mirror, realizing that her age and appearance are no longer what they used to be. Shortly afterward, Harvey suddenly invites Elizabeth to have lunch with him. During the conversation, Harvey subtly makes it clear that he plans to replace her because he believes she has become too old for the show. Hearing this leaves Elizabeth devastated, and she quietly accepts Harvey's decision as the producer. On her way home, Elizabeth notices that her billboard has already been replaced, causing her to lose focus and get into a car accident. Fortunately, she only suffers minor injuries. Still devastated by Harvey's decision, Elizabeth breaks down in tears and barely pays attention to the doctor explaining her condition.
My wife is a huge fan. Oh, you are good to go. Happy birthday.
After the doctor leaves, a nurse named Robin, who has a strange wound on his hand, examines Elizabeth's spine and tells her that she is a suitable candidate.
You're a good candidate.
Is there a problem?
No, it's perfect.
As she prepares to leave the hospital, Elizabeth discovers a flash drive labeled The Substance, along with a phone number and a message claiming that the substance changed someone's life. It is heavily implied that Robin secretly slipped the flash drive into her coat pocket. Not long afterward, Elizabeth unexpectedly runs into her old high school friend, Fred. Fred compliments Elizabeth's beauty and successful career, then asks if they can meet up since it has been a long time since they last saw each other. However, because she is in a hurry, Elizabeth only asks for Fred's phone number and promises to contact him another time.
Lizzie Sparkle? Fred from 10th grade homeroom. You're still the most beautiful girl in the whole world. Why don't we go out, maybe for a drink sometime?
Why don't you give me your card?
When she arrives home, her mood worsens after receiving farewell flowers from the TV show where she works. Out of curiosity, Elizabeth finally watches the flash drive labeled The Substance, which contains an advertisement for a mysterious treatment claimed to create a younger, more beautiful, and more perfect version of oneself. However, the new body can only be used for 7 days, and after that, the user must return to their original body for the next 7 days in an endless cycle. At the end of the video, there is also a warning, reminding users not to lose sight of their true identity or become consumed by their new body.
The Substance. You are one. One single injection that will release another version of yourself. You are the Matrix. This is simply a better version of yourself. A perfect balance of 7 days each.
Even so, the video never explains how the cloning process or body switching actually works. Believing it to be impossible, Elizabeth initially throws the flash drive away and tries to forget her problems by drinking alone at a bar while watching the young couples around her. But instead of making her feel better, the sight only makes Elizabeth more depressed, realizing that at her age, she has no partner because she spent years prioritizing her career above everything else. When Elizabeth returns home and reflects on her life, she falls even deeper into despair as she stares at the awards, which now feel like nothing more than remnants of a distant glory. Consumed by frustration and hopelessness, she throws one of her trophies at a photo of herself. Feeling as though her life has already fallen apart, Elizabeth eventually retrieves the flash drive and decides to call the number for the substance to order the treatment. Shortly afterward, she receives an address where she must go to collect the package.
I'd like to order.
Write this down. 35 North Byron Alley.
The next day, Elizabeth becomes frustrated after seeing an audition announcement searching for new talent to replace her. Not long afterward, she receives a package from the substance containing an access card labeled 503 and immediately heads to the address she was given. The location turns out to be an abandoned building with a panel marked The Substance. After using her access card, Elizabeth enters a sterile white room filled with rows of lockers and discovers a complete package of the substance treatment. The package contains an activator used to create a clone, which can only be used once, a stabilizer that must be taken daily to keep the clone body stable, a switch used to alternate bodies every 7 days, as well as nutrients to sustain either the original body or the clone while one of them remains inactive. The next day, Elizabeth goes to the filming location to collect her personal belongings. Harvey personally returns them to her and even gives her a farewell gift, a cookbook. After that, Elizabeth spends most of her time at home, marking the calendar so she won't forget the body switching schedule. The only reason she leaves the house is to pick up nutrient refill packages from the substance, and 7 days later, it is Sue's turn to come back to life.
There were issues where
Moving about.
As time passes, Elizabeth, while living inside Sue's body, gradually begins to hate and feel ashamed of her aging original body. Because of this, Sue breaks through the bathroom wall to create a hidden room where Elizabeth's original body can be kept out of sight. Afterward, Sue makes her debut as the host of the aerobics show Pump It Up, which feels much fresher and more modern compared to Elizabeth's old program. Her performance receives endless praise, including from Harvey, who is extremely satisfied with Sue's presence.
it's time to pump it up. I'm Sue. Are you ready? Thank you so much, everybody.
Wonderful.
Everything seems perfect until fame slowly causes Sue to forget the most important rule. On the 7th day, she must return to her original body. That night, Sue chooses to party until late and brings a man back home with her. However, she suddenly suffers a nosebleed and feels extremely dizzy after delaying the body switch for too long. As she rushes into the hidden room, Sue realizes that the nutrients sustaining Elizabeth's original body have already run out. But instead of switching back immediately, Sue recklessly extracts fluid from Elizabeth's spinal marrow so she can survive for one more day.
You seem even more beautiful than before.
When Elizabeth finally returns to her original body, she is horrified to discover that one of her fingers has aged and decayed much faster than the rest of her body. It becomes clear that this happened because Sue violated the 7-day switching rule in order to prolong her life as the clone. Panicking, Elizabeth contacts the substance and begs them to restore her body while blaming Sue for breaking the rules. However, the man on the phone explains that all of these changes were ultimately caused by Elizabeth herself while living as Sue. After all, Sue is simply another part of Elizabeth's consciousness acting on her own desires. Before ending the call, the company once again warns Elizabeth not to become consumed by her clone body. But while watching TV, Elizabeth instead begins to envy Sue, who is younger, more perfect, and adored by millions through Pump It Up. After picking up another nutrient package, Elizabeth goes to a nearby restaurant and unexpectedly meets an old man who remarks that 7 days feels like a very long time to wait. Elizabeth is shocked when she notices the wound on the man's hand and realizes that he is actually Robin's original body, while the younger Robin she met at the hospital was only his clone. Robin admits that the longer he uses the substance, the more he grows to hate his original body. Before Elizabeth leaves, Robin also asks whether her clone has already started consuming her original self.
It's long, isn't it? 7 days.
Excuse me?
To find out how things were going for you.
I don't know what you're talking about.
As Elizabeth is about to head home, she accidentally bumps into the man who previously spent the night with Sue. The man immediately snaps at her, making Elizabeth feel even more miserable because she believes no one values her anymore when she is in her original body. In the middle of her despair, Elizabeth remembers Fred, her old high school friend who had sincerely complimented her before. She quickly contacts Fred and agrees to meet him that evening. As the time approaches, Elizabeth desperately tries to look perfect, repeatedly fixing her makeup because she feels she can never be as beautiful as Sue. However, the moment she sees Sue's giant billboard through her window, her confidence completely shatters. Elizabeth realizes that no matter how hard she tries to improve her appearance, she will never be able to compete with Sue's beauty. Frustrated and overwhelmed, she ruins her makeup, messes up her hair, and ultimately chooses to ignore Fred, who has been waiting for her. From that moment on, Elizabeth's resentment towards Sue only grows stronger. After returning to Sue's body and continuing the filming of Pump It Up, Sue suddenly notices a strange lump forming on her body. Panicked, she rushes to the dressing room and tries to figure out what it is, only to discover that the lump turns out to be a piece of fried chicken.
I just got distracted. I need 5 minutes.
Fortunately, all of it is nothing more than a nightmare that occurs as Elizabeth switches back into Sue's body. Even so, the dream seems to reflect everything that happened while Elizabeth was living in her original body. Sue is shocked to find her house filled with leftovers, greasy foods, and junk food, making her realize that Elizabeth has been coping with her emotions by overeating, potentially damaging Sue's body. Frustrated, Sue contacts the substance and complains about the unfairness of the situation, arguing that while Elizabeth spends 7 days relaxing and eating, she is the one constantly working. However, the substance insists that Sue cannot blame Elizabeth because at their core, they are still the same consciousness. At this point, it becomes clear that Sue's desires are slowly separating from Elizabeth's original personality, as if Sue is developing an identity of her own.
Wastes 7 days in front of the TV while I barely have any time to enjoy myself. This balance is not working.
Remember, there is no she, and you are.
While living as Sue, Elizabeth becomes increasingly addicted to fame and grows to hate her aging original body, even going as far as breaking the rules. Meanwhile, Elizabeth in her original body becomes more jealous of Sue's growing popularity and takes out her frustration by damaging the clone body through excessive eating. Later, just before filming begins as usual, Harvey calls Sue into his office to announce that Pump It Up has become an enormous success. Because of the show's soaring ratings, Harvey wants Sue to host a live New Year's Eve special, expected to attract around 50 million viewers.
We want you to host New Year's Eve show. 50 million viewers.
Desperate to preserve her fame, Elizabeth continues living as Sue and delays the body switch far beyond the allowed limit. As a result, Elizabeth's wound on her back worsens and begins to rot. After more than 2 weeks, Sue finally returns to Elizabeth's original body. However, Elizabeth's condition has become horrifying. Her hair has started turning gray and parts of her body are aging at an alarming rate due to Sue repeatedly breaking the body switching rules. It appears that the longer the clone body is used beyond the 7-day limit, the faster the original body deteriorates and ages. Panicked, Elizabeth immediately contacts the substance, only to be told that her body will never return to normal, even if she stops the treatment. This leaves Elizabeth trapped in a painful dilemma. On one hand, she hates Sue for destroying her original body, but on the other hand, she has also become attached to the fame and perfect life her clone has achieved. In the end, Elizabeth decides to continue using the substance and promises herself that she will take better control of her clone.
Will it go back to the way it was before? Without consideration to the consequences. She's stealing more and more time from me. She didn't respect the balance.
What has been transferred won't come back. Would you like to stop?
No. Stop it.
Long story short, 3 months pass, and Sue is now at the peak of her popularity. One night, after returning home with her new boyfriend, Sue realizes that her supply of stabilizer has completely run out. When she enters the hidden room, Elizabeth's body is surrounded by piles of nutrient bags because all this time, Sue has been providing nutrients not only for the original body, but also for Elizabeth's clone body. However, when Sue tries to extract more spinal marrow fluid, only blood and pus come out instead. At the same time, her condition rapidly begins to deteriorate, forcing her to contact the substance. They explain that the only way for her to survive is to return to the original body and wait 7 days for the spinal marrow to regenerate. The problem is, Sue is scheduled to host the New Year's Eve event the very next day.
If you want more, you must let the fluid regenerate. You simply have to switch.
Especially not now. No.
Left with no other choice, Sue reluctantly switches back into Elizabeth's body, which has now become horrifying and almost monstrous in appearance. Seeing her own condition sends Elizabeth into hysteria, and she immediately throws Sue's boyfriend out of the apartment. Elizabeth then decides to stop using the substance and retrieves the termination package from the locker. Once she returns home, Elizabeth drags Sue's body into the living room and injects the termination serum into her. However, at the very last second, Elizabeth cannot bring herself to fully kill Sue because the clone has become a part of herself, a version loved and admired by millions of people. On top of that, Sue is currently at the peak of her career and is about to appear in a massive live event that same night, causing Elizabeth to stop before using the entire serum. Overwhelmed by indecision, Elizabeth recklessly activates the switch before the required time has passed. As a result, Sue comes back to life while Elizabeth remains conscious in her original body. The moment Sue notices the termination injection beside her, she panics and assumes Elizabeth was trying to kill her. Consumed by fear and rage, Sue brutally murders Elizabeth. After murdering Elizabeth, Sue immediately heads to the New Year's Eve event to prepare for her role as the host. However, in the middle of getting ready, she begins suffering from severe dizziness and nausea caused by the effects of the termination serum and the death of the original body, leaving her unable to extract spinal fluid to maintain her stability. As she goes to the restroom, the side effects become even worse, with her teeth starting to fall out one by one while the event is only moments away from beginning. Panicking, Sue remembers that there is still some activator left at home and quickly decides to go back. Although she briefly runs into Harvey on the way, Sue desperately hides her horrifying condition by forcing a smile. But as she rides down the elevator, her body starts falling apart even more. Her fingernails peel off and one of her ears suddenly drops. Once she arrives home, Sue immediately injects the remaining activator, hoping it will create a younger and more perfect version of herself so she can still appear at the New Year's Eve event. However, she forgets one crucial rule. The activator is only meant to be used once and was never intended for clone bodies. As a result, Sue's body undergoes a horrifying mutation and transforms into a grotesque creature formed from both herself and Elizabeth, a monster that could only be described as Elisa Sue. Because the event is about to begin, the Elisa Sue monster stubbornly continues getting ready, putting on her blue dress despite her body having transformed into something horrifying. She even straightens the few strands of hair she has left, then attaches a photo of Elizabeth's made-up face as a mask. After that, Elisa Sue heads to the studio and manages to get inside because the security guard cannot clearly see her true appearance in the darkness of the night. As her mind continues to unravel, Elisa Sue hallucinates that she is still being welcomed and admired by crowds of people, even though the hallway she walks through is completely empty. Not long after the New Year's Eve event begins, and the audience eagerly waits to welcome the show's biggest star. When the stage lights finally come back on, everyone falls silent at the horrifying sight standing before them. At first, the audience assumes it is merely an elaborate costume until Elisa Sue begins speaking in a distorted voice, and the mask on her face falls off, revealing her true, monstrous appearance. Instantly, the studio erupts into chaos as people scream in terror and desperately try to escape, while others attempt to attack Elisa Sue, even managing to destroy her head. However, Elisa Sue's body continues regenerating, and severed limbs spray blood throughout the entire studio. After the chaos, Alyssa Shue staggers out toward the Walk of Fame, but her body gradually falls apart, piece by piece, until only Elizabeth's face remains. In her final moments, Elisa Shue once again hallucinates about returning to the peak of her fame, when her name was adored by millions and her Walk of Fame star had just been unveiled. But the illusion slowly fades away, and the remaining pieces of Elizabeth finally melt onto her own star, marking the horrifying end of Elizabeth's life. The next morning, a janitor arrives and cleans up the remains of Elizabeth's body as if none of the horrifying events had ever happened. The film shows that the more Elizabeth chases perfection, the more she loses the truly valuable things in her life, such as genuine relationships, self-appreciation, and acceptance of who she really is. In the end, what destroys Elizabeth is not old age, but her hatred toward herself. Beauty, popularity, and fame will eventually fade away, and when someone builds their self-worth entirely around those things, they will ultimately lose themselves once everything disappears. And with that, the story comes to an end.